What is the rule of law?
Rule of law.
So if you ask me what the rule of law is,
The rule of law is the rule of law.
Rule of law.
So what is the rule of law? To me, it's law should be above the government, and that shouldn't be mediated to for the government.
The rule of law means that all men are subjected under the same law, and no man is above the law.
but for me, I guess the rule of law is a certain type of principles that govern our government, that when a person is being judged, those legal rules have to be looked at, and that they're in place so that they're looked at and everybody is judged through those rules, meaning that everyone is given fair judgment.
The rule of law is basically that all branches of government, none of the branches are above the law, and that everyone has to play according to the rules of the law. No one is above the law. That would be to me the rule of law. However, there is a proviso that despite the fact that something is the law doesn't mean that it has to be obeyed. Something called natural law. And natural law states that the rule of law has to adhere to the universal declaration, where it has to be moral, it has to be fair, and it cannot be unfair to anyone. That is very, very important. So if there's no morality in law, then it's not proper law, it's not good law.
The rule of law is a concept, it's an ideal concept where everyone's supposed to be subject to the law. However, people who are in superior powers fail to abide by it. So it's just a concept and it's not perfect and it's not being applied properly.
The rule of law to me is a set of principles and values that people are supposed to follow, and it's an assumption that no one should be above the law. But the real idea, we know that in the real world, in reality, that it's not true.
The rule of law is quite a confusing concept because on one hand, there are people who, with authority, they will govern the rule of law, which is a set of principles, but at the same time, no one is above the law. It's very subjective, and in reality, it can't really be practiced.
Basically means no one is above the law, but having said that, I don't think we should be so beholden to people of the past who've created the laws. And what I mean by that is not necessarily people in the past, but sometimes there are bad laws, and these laws ought to be challenged. For example, when Adolf Hitler ruled Nazi Germany, he ruled with laws, but very bad laws, very oppressive laws that violated human rights and whatnot. This principle of rule of law needs to be balanced with human rights.
Rule of law reminds me of the motto of the French Republic: liberty, equality, and fraternity. It reminds me that everyone is to be treated by the same rules, the same laws, and the same regulations, despite of your social standing, despite of your gender, despite of your background. It's basically a reaffirmation of the social contract by Jean-Jacques Rousseau.